We are back in the Royal Botanical Gardens of Sydney, Australia. You know, the Persian word, ancient Persian word for an enclosed garden was pardasim, and that gets borrowed eventually into English. It's the origin of our word, paradise. Paradise, if you will, is a beautiful garden. I'm Jonathan Watt with Atara Group International. If you like our series, we hope that you will like us and press the subscribe button. Right now, our dining series is going to focus on, well, ancient Persia, and a woman whose name is probably well known, Esther, also known as Hadassah, which was her Hebrew name. We're going to pick up about 5 years into the reign of Esther as the queen to the Emperor Xerxes I, absolute ruler over ancient Persia. And she has a secure position where she is. However, there is also in the court a high-ranking administrator by the name of Haman. And Haman, unfortunately, is quite anti-Semitic, and his determination is going to be, if he can, to eliminate every Jew who is living in the kingdom. And he devises a way to do it. He's going to basically earn the trust of Xerxes, get access to the signet ring that allows him to give the royal impression that underlines this decree, which will eventually, if it succeeds, lead to the elimination, the murder of every Jew in the kingdom in ancient Persia. And the story's going to unfold in a very kind of circuitous kind of way. Esther is within the court, but she has an uncle, Mordecai, who is living outside the court. And together they're going to start a collaboration which eventually triggers, actually, an elaborate plan where she is going to be able to carefully work out how a meal can lead to the justice for her people. Mordecai initiates, but Esther is going to orchestrate an elaborate plan, working around a meal, working around food in a way to be able to protect her people. Feasts, you know, are a great time of preparation. People join in, but first, she's going to ask for a fast. She will fast as she prays to God for their protection, and will join other people and have them join her in fasting. And even some of those in the court are also going to join her in the fast as they appeal to God for justice as it's needed. And then here's what she's going to do. She's going to very cautiously approach the court itself, literally in the very chamber where the Emperor Xerxes is going to be meeting with, well, various dignitaries and important people. And it's very important to know this, that in the Persian court in ancient times, only those who were summoned would be allowed to approach the king. Anyone who approached without being officially summoned would not be welcome. In fact, they could be executed right on the spot. So when Xerxes realizes that Esther is dressed in her best royal attire, and she is patiently waiting outside the immediate hall of meeting, he eventually is impressed by her respect towards him, and he welcomes her in and says, whatever your request may be, I'll grant you, up to half of my kingdom. At least those are the words that he expresses. And this is her immediate request. She would like to have a feast in which she will host both Xerxes the emperor, but also Haman the administrator, and then she'll clarify at that feast what she wants. And so they come and they have a fine time dining together, and Xerxes wants to know her request, but her request is going to delay things and lengthen the story as we wait to see how she's going to play this out. She asks then if she could hold a second feast that would also welcome Xerxes and Haman, and of course that's going to happen. But in between, that very night, before the second feast, Xerxes is going to have a terrible bout of insomnia. And he's wondering why, and he's staying awake, and his heart is troubling him. And he has his servants bring in some edicts and records from the past in which he realizes he needs to acknowledge some excellent deeds done by this man Mordecai, who sometime earlier had revealed a murder plot against the emperor, thus protecting his life. And so he asks how he can make this right, and also then asks Haman, ironically, how would you reward someone who has done excellent service to the emperor? And Haman thinks it's himself. And he says, well, you know what you would do is you would dress such a person in royal robes, and you'd have a public parade and honor them publicly, not realizing eventually that Haman is actually going to be the one who will lead the procession in which Mordecai the Jew is going to be honored. Haman is very upset and realizes with this decree that's also sitting there waiting to take place, Haman is going to build a super high gallows in which ultimately he hopes Mordecai will be either hung or impaled, and instead, of course, has had to honor Mordecai because of the good deeds he had done to the emperor. Well, the next day rolls around eventually, and there is a second feast. And Esther is planning this. Haman and the emperor are both invited, and at this feast, they have a wonderful time together. And Esther has to play her cards very carefully, because she has to show that she aligns with Xerxes. She's on the side of the emperor while distinguishing his hopefully good intentions from the evil intentions of Haman. And with great care, she eventually opens up her wish. And her wish, she says, well, she wouldn't normally trouble the emperor for it, but it's a matter of life and death for her and her people. Our people are being threatened. And Xerxes is perplexed. He says, well, who would threaten you and the people that you come from? And he leaves the hall enraged. He realizes something terrible is happening. Something evil is going on. He leaves the hall enraged. And at this point, Haman is realizing he is the one now about to be revealed as the person who's intending to kill all the Jews, including the queen herself. Now he realizes he has inadvertently signed an official decree with the king's signet ring, basically targeting the king's own royal wife. Well, Xerxes comes back into the meeting chamber where they've been having the feast, and he sees Haman begging at Esther's feet, begging for help, touching the queen, which was absolutely not permitted. And he's thinking to himself, is this what's going on in my absence, with my formerly trusted administrator even assaulting my own queen? It's easy at this point. Xerxes must choose Haman or Esther, and I think it's pretty clear which one he's going to do. And one of his attendants reminds him that Haman has built an extra high gallows intended ultimately for Mordecai, who had previously protected the king himself. And so Haman is taken out, and he is to be hung or impaled on these super high gallows, and the decree is left alone. The Jews are protected. They're allowed to fight back if needed, and ultimately, with a lot to open up, eventually there will be the safe continuation of the Jews in Persia. There are three ironies of the story of Esther in the Old Testament. One of them, which we've highlighted here, is that food facilitates a whole sequence of things, not only the winning of hearts and minds and time together with friends, but in this case, the story is threaded through Esther's revenge feasts in which justice is brought to the Jews. That's one irony. The second irony, God, even the name of God, is never directly mentioned in the book of Esther. Never, not once, is God's name or God's existence even acknowledged overtly. However, the providential hand of God is everywhere through the book, and you can't miss it. Providence is there. The third pleasant irony is, to this day, some 2.5 millennia after the fact, Jews celebrate the event of the protection of the Jews with the Feast of Purim that is recognized annually with a party and with a feast, and sometimes Haman even being hung in effigy. We hope you're enjoying this series on meals with great people from the past. We would like your ideas for what you think would be a great next series. Let us know in the comments section.